Now, Executive Suites with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Always glad to have you with us. Later on in the show this week, we're going to talk to lawyers from one of the leading local firms, Higgins, Cavanagh, and Cooney, about some of the trends they're seeing in the legal world and on the legal landscape. But first, I'm very pleased to be joined by two executives from Virgin Pulse, a division of Richard Branson's huge famous company. And they announced in December 2016, just last month, plans for a big expansion in Rhode Island. And those executives are David Osborne, President and Chief Operating Officer, and Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Chief Medical Officer. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
And some of you might remember Rajiv, who's joined us before when he was the Shape Up founder, which was eventually bought by Virgin Pulse in 2016, and that kind of helped lead the way to this announcement. So, but before we get to the announcement, what's going on in Providence, Dave, I'm going to start with you. People might not be familiar with exactly what the company does.
Sure.
So give us a thumbnail sketch. What do you actually do? What's the business
Sure.
at Virgin Pulse?
Okay. Yeah, so Virgin Pulse is the largest global software company in the well-being and employee engagement space. We basically allow employees of companies to show up healthy, happy, ready to work, engaged, productive before they get there. And we do that by letting them track their activity, track their water intake, nutrition, sleep, all the things that kind of make people happier and healthier to perform at their peak.
So it's kind of like social media. It's kind of like Fitbit type stuff that people think about. It's all those kind of using technology to try to be healthier.
There's a gamification around it, but the bigger part is really the business outcomes that we're seeing. We're seeing that people that are coming to work healthier and happier are performing at their best. There's less accidents at work, so less workman's comp expense, less absenteeism, so less medical expense. We're showing data now that takes attrition down 29% if you're part of the program. So these business outcomes are huge, and that's why businesses are looking to Virgin Pulse to help drive their employees and their engagement.
So Rajiv, let's say Channel 12 signs up or our parent company and wants to make me a little healthier. What sort of things might it be doing, or what's popular? What do they find is really effective of the sort of opportunities you guys offer to help with wellness?
Right, so the platform allows people to participate in what we call challenges. And that's, I'd say, one of the most popular features. So the ability to team up with your colleagues and to compete with those colleagues against other colleagues to try to achieve some type of goal. And it's not always a health and wellness goal. It could be, I want to be more productive at work, or I want to set my top priority every single day, or maybe I want to actually save for retirement or start to get out of debt. So you can actually have activities you're tracking around financial well-being, mental well-being, as well as physical well-being. Your employer will probably offer rewards, I hope, if they're generous. And even if they're not generous,
no comment.
We will come with the data to show that by investing in their employees, as Dave said, you're going to drive down a lot of your costs and you're going to drive up your productivity. There's even evidence to show that by investing in employee well-being, your stock price will outperform the S&P 500 if you're a publicly traded company. So there's a lot of good reasons to invest in well-being. And so companies will offer financial incentives, and as you participate, you'll rack up points, and those points will equate to dollars.
So some employers, and you already kind of alluded to some of the answers to this question, they might think, well, I give them health insurance, I'd like them to be healthy, but how much is it really the employer's responsibility, or should we be spending time thinking about, how people are living their lives, what sort of habits they have, and that sort of thing? And it sounds like your pitch is that it's a productivity thing. It's going to lead to better outcomes for the business.
Yeah, it's absolutely a productivity thing, and we're seeing that the usage of our platform on a weekly basis with employees exceeds Pinterest and LinkedIn. Obviously, we're below Facebook, but the usage is tremendous. So people are enjoying it. Their behavior changes are evident, and that's probably the most exciting part.
Well, so I guess part of it, and I think I remember this from talking to you when it was Shape Up, Rajiv, was that you didn't want it to feel like work, right? Or like your employer, like it's like I don't want my boss weighing me every morning or something, right? Like you have to make it kind of more fun.
That's a big part of it, and that's why we focus very heavily on the mobile experience. So we're actually the highest rated corporate wellness mobile application that's available on the Apple Store. Also available on the Android store. So that's a big piece of it. You come into it, you use it. It feels like a tool you might use in your personal life anyways, right? Something you would download and proactively use, not because your employer told you to do it, because you want to do it, because it's going to help you to reach personal goals that you have.
And we make it available to friends and family as well. So your wife can participate, or your husband can participate, or significant other. just that that motivation at home is great. But you got to be careful because my daughter challenged me to a step off every single day, which is difficult to keep up with.
Yeah,
she has PE and gym.
Yeah, I was going to say she gets the help there. When you look at your client base, is it mostly the really big companies you'd think of that has huge workforces? Are smaller ones able to use it as well?
It's everybody. I mean, it could be a small company, it can be a division of a small company, it can be the Fortune 500, the Fortune 100. I think of the Fortune 120 are our clients today. So, we made 2 acquisitions, one Shape Up and one the Global Challenge in Melbourne, Florida, allowing us to expand both internationally as well as better into the SMB space. So.
And how has that gone? We actually last time Rajiv was on, we were talking about the acquisition, him joining Virgin Pulse's Shape Up joined up and the company got bigger. How has that gone in terms of rolling out the combined company?
Completely smooth. Platforms are aligned, back office processes, sales, everything is integrated now, which is great.
Yeah. Do you agree?
Yeah,
I guess you have to now because
and I had it sort of, obviously going into it, I was very concerned about what would happen to the Shape Up employees and would we be treated well, and would the integration be something that everybody would feel positive about? Because most of the employees didn't have a say in whether or not we got acquired. So I feel really good about it. These transitions have been smooth. The cultures have blended really nicely. Many of the Shape Up employees have been promoted, have taken on new responsibilities. Some of them have been traveling to Framingham. Some of them have been having global opportunities to engage around the world. So it's been quite an experience. It's gone very smoothly so far.
And we have to go to break, but before we do, I'm curious. We were talking at the beginning of 2017, New Year. A lot of people making fitness decisions as they begin a new year. Do you see any trends you're expecting to come in this coming year as people in this well-being space? Things that people are going to be doing more of, or that you think companies will be joining up more?
I think technology is where all the innovation is happening. That's why we're excited about, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, the jobs that we're going to be creating here in Rhode Island. But one of the biggest trends is the smart home, and people are buying Amazon Alexas and Google Homes, and now you can actually interface with them from a health and fitness perspective. So you can come home and talk to Amazon and Alexa and say, hey, how many steps did I do today? What should I do tomorrow? Right? And we've actually integrated now with Amazon Alexa with the Virgin Pulse app. So I think some of the smart technology, artificial intelligence, integration into the smart home, that's a big part
beacon
of
technology as well.
Exactly.
As an employer, you can put beacons by stairs or by water coolers, and your phone can buzz or send you a note saying, hey, take the stairs, don't take the elevator. So there's some really
I'll be
cool
excited
technology.
when I say, Alexa, go to the gym for me. But we'll see when that happens. All right, stick with us. We're going to talk more with the gentleman from Virgin Pulse, and then later on have a talk about the latest in the legal world. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about the legal business and the latest there with some folks from Higgins, Cavanagh, and Cooney. But right now, I'm talking to 2 executives from Virgin Pulse. Dave Osborne, he is the Chief Operating Officer and the President at Virgin Pulse, and Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Chief Medical Officer. And the big news you had just last month in December 2016 was that you are going to expand and add hundreds of jobs in Providence, which was obviously the governor was very happy to be making that announcement. And Providence are obviously where Shape Up started, your startup that had been acquired into Virgin Pulse. I'm curious how that came about, Dave, as the Virgin Pulse side guy, or the longtime Virgin Pulse guy. What made Rhode Island stick out? Why did you decide to come here?
So, when we first started thinking about integration, the Rule 101 is bring offices together. When I looked at our hiring plans for the next couple years, it was evident to me that we need to be in more of a metropolitan town. It's difficult being in the suburbs to recruit talent, especially young talent, what I call high potential entry level, or a lot of the millennials now that want to walk to work, take their bike to work or their bus or mass transit. Hard to recruit in the suburbs. So Rajiv put the bug in my ear, said, naturally I was looking at Boston. So he said, hey, if you're looking at Boston, you should probably look at Rhode Island and Providence specifically, where their office was. So it was an interesting journey, and the governor and her staff were great. They opened my eyes up to a really kind of cool, hip town. Other than what GQ says about it, I'm sure it's true. But just an opportunity to have a great train system, so you can pull from the Boston talent base. You've got an up-and-coming town with literally a front-row recruiting seat to all these great schools. So that was the kind of the genesis behind why we looked at Providence. And then obviously they've got a great jobs creation program and tax incentive, which helped as well. So.
And I have to ask about that because people, sometimes taxpayers, they say, oh, the incentives and everything. How important was that to your decision?
It's a great program. Yeah, no, sorry to interrupt. It's a great program. It was definitely one of the areas that kind of pushed it over, kind of the needle over the wall as far as let's go to Providence, because it's a great incentive. As you said, we're going to add hundreds of jobs, so this was the place to be. And
did you ever think when you were selling the company that you'd wind up actually getting hundreds of jobs to be in Providence because of it?
I didn't think so, but I hoped so. When I sold the company, a lot of people came and asked me, what's going to happen? I said, my hope is we can find a way to get this company to come to Providence and sell them on, why we've been here and why we've been successful here. So I wouldn't say I was certain that it would happen, but I was hopeful, and I'm glad that it's happening. So we're very excited about this.
What do you guys think in terms of, okay, so there was your announcement, they had the Johnson & Johnson announcement recently, GE's adding some tech jobs here. The hope among state leaders is that this, you have this catalytic effect, you have more and more of this, there's organic growth. What are the other things that you think, I'll ask you first, Dave, that state leaders should be looking at that will incentivize tech? People look enviously up at Cambridge, as you said you were looking at Boston.
Sure.
What sort of things do you think make a difference?
I think the cost of living here makes a difference, right? There's great schools, there's cost of living, there's, like I said, great universities and colleges to recruit from. I love the fact that you've got more and more companies coming here. It's a network effect of sorts, which I think is outstanding. So.
What do you think, Rajiv?
Yeah, I think, to build on that network effect comment, we need to build a community, and specifically a community around technology. So one of the things that we need to be doing is connecting with all of these companies that are coming here. So as Virgin Pulse, we should be sitting down with GE Digital and with Johnson & Johnson and saying, what are you trying to accomplish here? What's your business all about? How can we work together? And I think we can create that network effect, and we can draw more people who want to come. I also think, to Dave's point, companies don't want to be in the suburbs anymore. That was a trend in the 90s and the early 2000s, moving out of the big city, coming to the suburbs where you can have more space and a beautiful campus. Millennial talent in general wants to be in cities now. And so as a lot of suburban companies, especially in Massachusetts and Connecticut, are thinking about what city should I go to, I think we should be knocking on their doors and saying, hey, look at all these other companies that have chose to come to Providence and to Rhode Island, and let's be proactive about it. We had a connection to Providence, so that's why we were able to have that conversation, but there's probably thousands of companies in suburban Massachusetts we should be going after.
Have you guys decided where you're going to be, where you're going to put the office?
We're going to be downtown. We haven't signed the lease yet. I think everybody in Providence probably knows where we're going to be, unfortunately. So, but yeah, we're excited to kind of get it announced and do some sort of ribbon cutting.
And what kind of jobs, who are you going to be hiring? What jobs will people be doing in this office?
So that's a great question. I think software companies are a wonderful springboard to launch careers. So we're going to be hiring inside sales, client success, which are customer-facing roles, engineering, of course, marketing, help desk.
So it's not just people might be hearing about it all and think, oh, it's all people who know how to code and writing applications or something. It's not all that.
1/5 of the kind of talent we're probably trying to bring in. Like I said, I've got this acronym, high potential entry level, right? And hire these great people and bring them in and let them try their skills out in various components of the job and teach them and give them a great career. And that's kind of what a great company does. So we're excited to really put that into force.
Last thought on that, Rajiv?
Well, I just wanted to put in a plug for my team. One of the teams that I run at the company is the analytics group. And so we're going to be hiring data engineers, data scientists, statisticians to help us really harness the trillions of data points that we collect on our participants every single year and trying to build insights for our clients. And so we're going to be recruiting in that particular area as well.
All right, so Rajiv wants to hire you. So send your resumes in if that sounds appealing. Gentlemen, David Osborne, Rajiv Kumar, thank you both for being with me. Thank you for watching, but stick with us because we're not done yet. When we come back, we're going to talk with some lawyers from Higgins, Cavanagh, and Cooney about workers' comp, the business of law, and whether you should go to law school. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and we're now talking with two notable local attorneys, James Ruggieri and James Hornstein. They are both partners at Higgins, Cavanagh, and Cooney. And James, I got to say Jim, but they're both Jim, so I'll look at you, Jim Ruggieri. A lot of our viewers aren't lawyers. They may think all law firms are the same or not really understanding what the differences are. So explain in layman's terms what you see is unique about your law firm, differentiates it.
Well, first of all, let me say that Higgins Cavanagh is a 17-lawyer firm. We just celebrated our 65th anniversary. We've been around for a while.
The firm can retire now.
No, well, the firm can, but I can't.
Yeah, right.
And we service insurance clients, we service large corporations, we service individual local companies. We've been around for a while, and what makes us kind of unique is that we're in a niche that's a little different from people might know about the criminal law firm or maybe the personal injury law firm. We sort of focus more on corporate litigation, business law. But that said, we have partners who are experienced in family law, especially cases involving significant business interests, things of that nature. That's pretty much what we do.
That's what sets you out. How is it hard? Is it, I feel like we saw for a while there are a lot of big law firms getting bigger, just like these mergers and mergers and mergers. I don't even know what half their names are anymore because they've changed so many times. How do you compete as a smaller law firm with these big firms with 80 offices and a billion lawyers and all that?
Yeah, we're in a different market than a lot of those firms. Although that said, we do play in the same field with some of them. For example, we have a very significant toxic tort and product liability defense practice. And a lot of these big firms that you're talking about also represent clients in those areas. Now, very often they will represent one client nationally, and very often a firm like ours will represent a client like that regionally, or we can be retained by one of these national firms to assist them.
Oh, so they bring you
litigation.
in.
Exactly,
Gotcha.
exactly. They may have a contract to represent a manufacturer in all of their asbestos litigation, but they may come to us to say, take care of our cases in Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, for example. But really, we're very different than the big white shoe law firms, and we service a different part of the market. We service the insurance industry, we service large corporations, for example, large retail outlets. We have a very active retail and restaurant practice group, and we service those clients in Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, big box stores, restaurant chains, things of that nature.
Jim Hornstein, one of the things I thought would be interesting to talk about, you lead up the workers' comp group at the law firm, and that people, Rhode Islanders will probably remember, there was a famous effort to fix workers' comp in Rhode Island. I think Beacon Mutual stems from all that, and it was a big effort. There was a lot of problems with that. Now, that's been underway a long time now, those reforms. How is the system working today? What is kind of the issues and challenges there today?
The system works very well. It provides speed, which is one thing that was lacking in the past. So hearings are held quickly, they're informal, and it allows the parties to reach a resolution quickly one way, to either get individuals on benefits or to suspend benefits if they're no longer disabled. So the reforms which were enacted in 1990, 1992 have had the desired effect. And the biggest issue was limiting the collection of benefits. Now there's a cap on how long someone can collect benefits, and that has really helped to lower the costs in speed litigation.
So that's really helped to rein that stuff in.
Correct.
Are there challenges now, new challenges coming up? Are there things that are going to be tackled, do you think, in the future on it?
Well, the biggest issue right now is actually coverage disputes between insurance companies for people who are injured out of state but bring actions in Rhode Island. Oh. And our firm's involved in a Supreme Court case, which is due to be argued later this month, on which insurance company should pay the claim. For an employer, we represent an employer who paid 2 premiums and nobody wanted to pay the claim. So
wouldn't be very happy if I'm that employer.
So that issue has been germinating for about 10 years, and they're finally going to address the issue before the Supreme Court.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
The other issue is coming one was really expanded. It used to be when you left, you were only covered once you got hurt at work. They've really expanded the perimeter or the scope of what is the area where if you get hurt, you are considered a compensable injury. For example, when you leave your car to go into work, if you're injured on the way, it's considered to be a workers' compensation injury. That never used to be the case. It's really expanded.
So it's expanded that. Jim, we hear the update there on workers' comp. How about more broadly? Are there types of cases that you're seeing a lot more of now that maybe you didn't years ago, things you've seen through your career changing?
Yeah. I've been practicing now for 32 years, and one of the big trends is in not so much cases. I mean, there's still slip and falls, there's still accident cases, there's still product liability cases. But we see a real change in the way litigation is conducted. And one of the big things that is very different from when I started is the ADR, the Alternative Dispute Resolution. About 20, 25 years ago, when that was just starting to get some traction, I'll tell you, lawyers were very reluctant.
This is
to engage.
mediation, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Mediation, arbitration. As defense lawyers, primarily, we were always concerned that we're tipping our hand.
Sure.
That, we're not going to go to this. Court can't tell me to go, open up my file for the other side at this stage of the litigation. I got to keep my secrets, But that has changed tremendously. And, most cases now, most sophisticated clients, and we do represent some very sophisticated clients, most judges, they want to get these cases ready for mediation or arbitration as quickly as possible. So there's a focus in funneling a lot of the upfront work into getting enough discovery done to determine whether there's enough. Now we could sit down and find out whether we can get rid of this case.
Do you think that's good?
I think it's great.
Why?
Well, for one thing, it services the client's needs right now. The clients they're litigation averse, they're risk averse, and they're incredibly cost conscious, be it an insurance carrier that's paying the bill, a self-insured corporation. They want to limit legal costs without taking away from the quality of the service. And to sort of get back to what differentiates us, that's what we pride ourselves on. We pride ourselves on delivering efficient, effective legal services. And we do that by investing heavily in our document management and time management systems. For a firm of our size, we're very technologically heavy. And we do that by paying attention to case management and what they call cycle times. In other words, the life of a case.
Sure,
The longer a case...
I'm stunned sometimes how long I'm covering some of these cases.
The longer a case stays open, the more it costs.
Yeah.
So that's a really big change in just the way litigation is handled, as opposed to, say, 15, 20 years ago.
So I always love to ask when I have lawyers on, because I'm sure you get the question all the time, should I go to law school for someone young they're thinking about and everything? And I'll start with you on Jim Hornstein. What's your quick advice you give when someone troops into your office with that?
I give the same advice I gave to my son. My son was in college, and he told me he was going in the business direction, and he came to me and said, I want to be an English major and go to law school. I told him, follow your own path. And my suggestion is do what you like to do. Do what you want to do. If you want to represent people or argue, whether it be a corporation or an individual, if you like representing people, then this is the path you should choose. But it's not a get-rich path necessarily, but it might be a fulfilling path. If you that's what you like to do, you like to represent people and argue on behalf of other folks who can't, then that's the right path for you to choose.
How about you, Jim? What do you tell them?
Law school applications are down across the country at almost every level of law school. And that's because it is harder now to get jobs than it used to be. But that said, the law is still a wonderful career. If that's your passion, you may not end up in a law firm trying cases. You may decide you want to engage in some other area of the law. I have talked to students who have decided, I want to be an environmental lawyer, I want to work in California, and you know what, I'm going to do what I have to do to get to that point, as opposed to taking, say, the first job that they can get, which is a little bit different than when I was coming up. But law is also a great path to many other careers. There are lots of careers that don't require a law degree, but are really enhanced by having one, be it in the business field, the insurance field, the medical field, the healthcare field. So if you like the law, if you think that's what you'd want to do, I would never tell anybody not to go.
So no regrets from our two lawyers. All right, gentlemen, we're out of time, but thank you so much. Jim Hornstein, Jim Ruggieri, thank you both for being here. From Higgins, Cavanagh, and Cooney, and
Thanks,
thank you
Ted.
for joining us on Executive Suite this week. Remember, if you missed any of the episode, you can catch the whole thing on WPRI.com. We'll see you back here next week.